Corla. If I may begin, I would like to join in tributes expressed across the House today on the passing of two Irish legends in broadcasting. The wonderful Micheál Murthaig was the sound of the GAA, the sound of Sunday, and for generations of fans. He was an exceptionally descriptive broadcaster, but was also generous with his time, particularly promoting the Irish language, his native tongue. I offer my condolence to his wife Helena, their extensive family and wider circle of friends. We also learned, of course, today of the passing of Tommy Gorman, who played a significant role in the peace process and reporting on the turbulent times in the North. Tommy was always delivering his segments with honesty and clarity and was a trusted journalist down through the years. And I'd like to offer my condolence to Tommy's family, Ciara, Moya and Joe, and their wider family and friends, and also to extend my sympathies to their RTE colleagues of both Micheál and Tommy. Last Corla, I welcome the opportunity to examine the proposed EU Asylum and Migration Pact. Firstly, I want to thank everyone who's been in contact with me with their feedback on this issue. And it's fair to say that the matter has generated a significant public interest. And I would welcome the time that has been allocated to allow a full debate here in this House and to ensure that every TD has the opportunity to have their say on behalf of their constituents. As has been mentioned by many contributors, the EU Asylum and Migration Pact was proposed by the EU states as a response to the pressure of irregular migration. At the heart of the pact is the acknowledgement that no single state can successfully deal with the challenges on their own. Only through working together at EU level we can hope to manage the challenges of irregular migration. I know many MEPs on the left in the European Parliament opposed the pact on the basis that they felt the provisions were too strict. Indeed, they felt arrangements should be more relaxed, and I would strongly disagree with this sentiment. On the other hand, there's other MEPs opposed to the pact favouring the go-it-alone policy for individual states, and again I disagree, as I don't believe this is a viable nor sustainable policy approach. Over the past 2 years, we've seen a very significant increase in the number of people applying for asylum here in Ireland. This has put significant strain on the state and indeed on communities across Ireland. Elements of the existing arrangements, practices and laws surrounding people seeking asylum are not satisfactory, and we know that. Existing laws need to be enforced, where necessary updated, and the pact will ensure laws are updated. We have seen the challenges created by people destroying documentation when landing in the state and presenting without documentation. I know authorities have moved to deal with this by actively enforcing Section 11 of the Immigration Act 2004. Fianna Fáil's called for the legislation to be updated to make destruction of documentation a standalone criminal offence. We also want to see fines significantly increased for airlines and ferry companies that fail to comply with their obligations under Section 2 of the Immigration Act, and to ensure that each person they carry into the country has a valid passport or other equivalent document. We also want to see greater cooperation with authorities in Northern Ireland concerning people arriving from the UK, which, as we have seen, has become a significant channel of entry here. Ultimately, the processing times for people seeking asylum needs to be dramatically reduced, and where someone is found to be an unsuccessful claim, they must leave the state or be deported. Where someone commits a crime in Ireland, they too should be deported immediately once the criminal proceedings have concluded. As regards the EU Asylum and Migration Pact, I'm conscious that Ireland cannot deal with the impact of immigration alone, and the pact is an attempt to deal with this issue on an EU-wide basis. However, I have concerns myself in relation to the pact. That said, many aspects are welcome, such as the pact's enhanced screening and security measures, which will reduce irregular secondary movements of asylum seekers. This provision is particularly important for Ireland, as the pact will involve the end of the Dublin Convention, which could leave Ireland open to having to deal with secondary movements if we remain outside of the pact. The pact would also see the expansion of the Eurodac database, used to check migrants' fingerprints, which would enable even more information to be shared between countries. The elements to strengthen EU borders are also welcome, as are the agreements with Tunisia, Mauritania and Egypt to prevent irregular deportations from happening in the first place. The provision of the pact will ensure that EU borders will be screened. Screening includes identity check and security checks. This information is collected at screening, including fingerprints, will be updated and stored on the EU database of Eurodac, available to all states within the pact. In my view, it's critical, Last Corla, that Ireland have access to the database and that information. And secondly, the pact requires the applications are processed within 6 months, with an accelerated procedure of 3 months available where a person is deemed a security risk. The efficient processing of applications is critical, and as we know, appeals against deportations frequently cite delays in processing applications. The principle at the heart of the EU Migration and Asylum Pact is to establish a more coherent approach across the EU of migration, asylum, immigration, integration and border management, one fit for the 21st century. And in conclusion, while elements of the pact are not perfect, it is not sustainable for Ireland to attempt to go it alone. And reference has been made earlier about Brexit. Look what's happened within the UK. And it's only through working together as EU member states we can deal with the challenge of irregular migration. On that basis, I'll be supporting this pact. Cormac.